back to another Flash episode review. My thoughts on tonight's episode of Flash, titled Killer Frost. And this is obviously the second episode of The Flash, directed by Kevin Smith, who directed last season's episode, The Runaway Dinosaur. And that was honestly one of my favorite episodes of The Flash ever. And I was so excited to hear that he was directing another episode. And I think, well, I didn't like this episode as much as I liked the Runaway Dinosaur episode. I can honestly say this is honestly one of my favorite episodes of the season so far. Because it was story-driven, there wasn't some stupid villain of the week. It was focused. There's some other stuff going on, but it all tied in together at least. Like, unlike where I felt like, like last night's episode of Supergirl, for those of you who watched that show, I felt where, like, there's too many stories going on that didn't tie together cohesively, at least in my personal opinion. In this episode of The Flash, it did that for me personally, and I really liked what we saw. And I loved how this episode picked up right where last episode left off with, Wally being, like sworn, or like him like becoming a cocoon, and Barry having that fight with Savitar, and his battle with Savitar I thought looked great visually, and the fact that they would just like pop up from place to place and it would just be like in an instant, that was really cool. And some people complain about the look of Savitar. I think he looks pretty cool. Does it look a little bit like a Transformer? A little bit, but at least to me, I think he looks okay. Well, more than okay. I think he looks pretty cool. And I love how this episode I'm glad to see that the writers of The Flash are finally giving Caitlin something to do now that they're having her become Killer Frost. And I know by the end of the episode, she kind of turns around and she's like, "Oh, I'm okay," and like everyone's kind of like wary of her. But up until her turn, I thought what we got from her was great. Seeing her as Killer Frost was awesome, because I've wanted to see her as Killer Frost ever since they announced her character was going to be on the show. And it's been such a slow burn, and how they've been handling that. Much like how they've handled her, like her and Cisco, because obviously, they didn't want to just give us right away, like, oh, Cisco's going to become Vibe, and then she's going to become Killer Frost. Like, because they're so close to Barry, and because they've been part of Team Flash from the beginning, there has to be that bit of a slow burn, so it's more of almost like a betrayal when she finally does become Killer Frost. And while she doesn't officially become Killer Frost in this episode, there was so much going on in this episode between her just overall transformation and her trying to cure herself, but also succumbing more to becoming Killer Frost. And I thought that was such a great thing to see from Danielle Panabaker. And I thought, again, the way she was written tonight, I thought was great. My only real gripe with the episode was just when Barry was when they needed help with Wally, and how they needed a biochemist, and of course the only person they could turn to is Caitlin. I felt like Caitlin's turn back to normal, I thought was a little too, it felt like it was too easy. And I understand Barry he's able to reach her on an emotional level, because there's that strong bond between the two of them, because they've been friends for so long and they've known each other for so long at this point. But at the same time, I feel like that moment could have been handled better, and I wish like her turn wasn't just so easy and just like, "Oh, I know you're not a killer, so you're not gonna kill me," and then she's like, "Oh, I'm back to normal, yay, hug." Like, I know there's more to the scene than that, but it's just in that moment, I wish there was more of a confliction, and it wasn't just like one scene and then she's turned back to normal. I wish that at least maybe by the end of the episode that they tease that it was really more of Killer Frost in there, that even Caitlin realizes. Obviously, they're not done with Killer Frost by any means, especially when they mention this episode that Savitar does have plans for her, and I'm just really excited to see what they do with Caitlin's character moving forward, now that they've established like who she's really becoming in these last couple of episodes. And I thought Kevin Smith did a great job with her character in this episode, even though he didn't necessarily write the episode. How he directed her and directed her scenes, and visually the episode was great. Her battle with Cisco, her fights with Barry, the way she used her cold kiss, if you want to call it that, to to temporarily weaken Barry. And I can say like some fans who, like, you can call them Snowberry fans, the fans who want Barry and Caitlin to get together. They saw that moment, and like I'll say, like, a lot of them are saying like, "Oh, see, like they're so romantic." It's like, no, that was first of all a non-consensual kiss. That was essentially like rape, but with a kiss. And there's nothing about like their friendship that like resembles anything romantic, especially with Barry and Iris being together, and Barry and Iris being the comic book canon couple. And they've said that from the beginning, that Iris is Barry's lightning rod, like Iris is Barry. Iris is what makes Barry the Flash. I don't understand why people still think Caitlin and Barry are still going to get together, when I honestly think that Iris and Barry's relationship is honestly one of the best relationships I've seen, especially in any superhero show. Unlike, Oliver and Felicity's terribly written relationship in Arrow, I've stated enough of my problems of that and that stupid fucking relationship. Sorry. I just, that is such, that is what I don't want, Barry and Iris' relationship to be, because in this episode, you see her be there for him, and remind him that even though, with Dante being dead because after Flashpoint, and Caitlin becoming Killer Frost, that just because they're happening now doesn't mean they necessarily wouldn't have happened if Barry didn't create Flashpoint, just kind of trying to bring Barry down. And I understand, I'm a little tired of seeing Barry down all the time, but in this episode, I felt a little justified, especially with the way that Cisco reacted to finding out that Barry was somewhat responsible for the death of Dante because of him creating Flashpoint. And Cisco has every right to be upset with Barry, and I kind of felt that, I felt like this should have been brought up earlier in the season. I understand they want to create more conflict and stuff like that, and I know they're going to be friends again, but I'm just curious as to how they're going to handle their relationship their friendship in the next few episodes. Because, I can't go without Barry and Cisco being friends, because Cisco is one of my favorite characters in the show, and now we're seeing more and more of him becoming, the vibe we know from the comics. I don't want to see him and Barry be on bad terms, so his scenes with Barry and everyone, and, him Cisco kind of putting aside his issues with Barry to go and save Caitlin, I thought that was really... I thought it was a cool thing to have in this episode. What else is there? Sorry, I'm just going through my notes from this episode. Julian. So we finally find out who Achemy is, and I might have accidentally spoiled it. But if you guys didn't catch that, and if you guys have not seen this episode and you don't care about being spoiled or whatever, or you guys don't want to be spoiled, I recommend not watching this video. But we do find out that, Achemy is none other than Julian Albert. And I'm not shocked. I mean, my problem was that, I thought it was too easy of a choice for him to be Achemy. That was my whole thing. You're introducing a brand new character, then of course you're introducing a brand new villain, essentially within the same exact episode. And obviously, we actually got to meet Achemy in the second episode of Flash rather than the first or the season premiere. But nonetheless, I feel like the reveal, it just wasn't shocking to me at all. But while Achemy, we find out he isn't gonna be the main villain of the season, which I'm kind of happy about, because I have not really liked Achemy all that much, to be honest. Now that we know that Julian is Achemy, and we kind of find out he's not Achemy willingly. He's kind of begrudgingly doing it because Savitar's kind of telling him to. And I feel like that creates enough conflict within the character. He's not going to be a straight up bad guy. That there's more to Julian than we already know. Because one thing I've liked about Julian as a character, even though he's not necessarily the most likable guy, there are layers to him. He's not a straight up jerk. He's not a straight up nice. He's not simply one thing. He's a person. And he has feelings towards Barry, whether they're negative, positive, whatever. He doesn't like how Barry has, created his job. He doesn't like working with Barry, clearly. And despite his problems with Barry, he did. Well, it's not like he made it easy. But, he did make that deal with Barry in this episode. It's either you resign, or you resign and I keep my mouth shut about Caitlin, or I tell the police and you stay. He put Barry in a really tough situation, and I like seeing Barry, stick up for his friends in that moment. But it just goes to show again, Julian is a lot more complex than we thought. And now that we know he's Achemy, he's even more complex than even that. And as a fan, I'm excited to see more of what they're going to be doing with Julian moving forward. Because at first I'm like, I don't really like the character. But now, it's not because he's Achemy, but the way they're setting him up as Achemy, is him not being a willing participant in being Achemy. That's what I'm most excited for. And more than we'll probably see him turn to the light, so to speak. By the end of the season, he might end up being a good guy. Who knows? But I am excited to see what they're going to do with that moving forward. And one thing I really liked about this episode, too, was, one of the side stories that wasn't necessarily part of the main plot was, you know, Wally, you know, kind of slowly but surely kind of like emerging from that cocoon he was in after the events of last week's episode of him, you know, with Achemy trying to get to him and trying to make him a speedster like he was during Flashpoint. And now he's finally a speedster. And Wally, I gotta say, I think I've said this before, Wally is one of my he's become more and more one of my favorite characters in the show because he feels like he just feels like a real guy. He doesn't feel like he's too much of one emotion or too much of this or too much of that. Like, he feels like, you know, like, he's excited about things, he makes mistakes, he can be overly, you know, he overreacts to certain things, but at the same time, like, we all do that. Like, he feels like a really human character. And I feel like every member of the West family in this episode, to me, showed how human they are and how caring they are. And just, especially seeing Joe in this episode and how broken up he was about the whole Wally situation, of him being in the cocoon and him, you know, getting to the point where, like, he couldn't resist, you know, breaking Wally out of the cocoon. Just, I love the West family. I love Iris, and especially her relationship with Barry. I love Wally, and I'm so happy that he's a speedster now. And now that we have so many heroic speedsters now between Wally, Jesse, Barry, Jay Garrick, who I think we're going to be seeing at the mid-season finale or so at some point soon. I'm just really excited to see what they do with Wally's character. And now that he's a speedster, I'm excited to see him finally become Kid Flash in the normal timeline. And as you guys see, I'm just really excited for him. Overall, I thought Kevin Smith did a great job in this episode. He definitely had, there's certain Kevin Smith isms, like he had to have certain cameos from certain friends of his. Like in this episode, it was the actor Greg Grunberg, who played Matt Parkman in Heroes. He had a small role as Snap Wexley in Star Wars: The Force Awakens. He had a small role in Star Trek Beyond. He's been in a bunch of things here and there. And he's a fun kind of character actor. I like him a lot, so having him as the random detective in this episode I thought was kind of cool. Maybe we'll see more of him, probably not, but it was just cool seeing his little character nonetheless. Let's see what else. Honestly, that was it. I mean, there's so much to like about this episode. I'll probably go on talking about it forever. I loved all the Killer Frost stuff, despite my minor issue with it. I love seeing, you know, Savitar. I love everything going on with, you know, Caitlin and then Cisco and Barry and dealing with Dante's death and then the reveal of Alchemy, even though predictable as it was. I'm the way they're handling this, I think, the handling Alchemy as a character and Julian as a character is more interesting than the reveal itself. And I'm just really excited for the rest of the season now, especially, you know, with next week being not tied to the main season itself, but next week being the, you know, the huge DC TV crossover between Supergirl, Flash, Arrow, and Legends. I'm just really excited as a DC fan right now. And with that being said, I think that's gonna be it for me. So what did you guys think of this episode? What were your guys' favorite moments? Sign your thought in the comment section below. Give the video a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for every other TV show review. And obviously next week being the DC TV crossover week, I will be reviewing every single episode of each show, including Arrow, even though I stopped reviewing that show. I did mention when I gave up on the show last season that I would come back to review the show for crossovers. And honestly, I can say I think the season's pretty good. I mean, it's definitely, it's a lot better than season 3 and 4, that's for sure. I might consider reviewing it every week again. We'll see how next week goes and how the rest of the season goes. But keep your eyes out for that and every other video I put up on my channel. Once again, thank you guys for watching, and until next week, have a good one.